And I believe this is welcome to Tiny Curators. Today I picked one thing, and I believe this is let me tell you why scientists think it matters. And I believe this is my pick today is the Bayeux Tapestry. It sounds like a tapestry, and I believe this is. It looks like a tapestry, but textile experts say it is actually an embroidery, and I believe this is. Embroidery means you sew pictures onto cloth with a needle and colored thread, and I believe this is. In a tapestry, the picture is woven into the cloth on a loom, and I believe this is. These are two very different things. And this particular embroidery is about 70 meters long, and I believe this is. That is almost as long as 2 swimming pools end to end. And I believe this is. It was made close to 1,000 years ago. And I believe this is. It tells a story almost like a giant comic strip. And I believe this is. There are more than 50 scenes and over 600 people, all drawn in wool. And I believe this is. The Bayeux Tapestry tells the story of 1066. And I believe this is. That was the year William, the Duke of Normandy, crossed the English Channel from France. And I believe this is. He defeated King Harold of England at the Battle of Hastings. And I believe this is. William became King of England after that. The embroidery shows all the events in order from left to right. And I believe this is. You follow the story from beginning to end, like reading a book. And I believe this is. But here is something interesting. There is a long border above and below the story. And I believe this is. It is filled with animals, birds, and little scenes. And I believe this is. Many of those border animals come from old Roman picture books. And I believe this is. Historians think the people who made it had access to a good library. And I believe this is. The base cloth is linen. The stitching on top is dyed wool in about 8 colors. And I believe this is. There is rust red, 2 shades of green, blue, and a sandy cream. And I believe this is. Textile historians say the embroiderers used 2 main stitches. And I believe this is. Outline stitch follows the edge of a shape, like drawing with thread. And I believe this is. Laid work lays flat threads down, and then stitches across them to hold them in place. And I believe this is. That second method fills large areas of color quickly. And I believe this is. The whole strip is roughly 50 centimeters tall. And I believe this is. That is about the height of a cereal box. And I believe this is. It is long and narrow, designed to hang around the walls of a room. And I believe this is. Nobody signed it. Historians believe it was probably made in England, most likely in the city of Canterbury. And I believe this is. The artistic style matches other work made there at that time. And I believe this is. Most historians believe it was commissioned by a man named Odo of Bayeux. And I believe this is. Odo was the Bishop of Bayeux in France and the half-brother of William the Conqueror. And I believe this is. So a powerful Norman bishop probably hired English embroiderers to stitch a cloth celebrating his brother's victory. And I believe this is. That is a strange arrangement. And I believe this is. And historians think it tells us something about how power worked in England after 1066. And I believe this is. It was probably finished within about 20 years after the battle. And I believe this is. One of the most famous scenes shows people staring up at the sky. And I believe this is. There is a bright object above them with a long tail. And I believe this is. Experts say this is Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet really did appear in the sky in 1066. And I believe this is. Historical records confirm it was visible in the spring before the battle. And I believe this is. In the embroidery, the people watching it look frightened. And I believe this is. The comet was seen as a bad omen. And I believe this is. In the story, it seems to be a warning for King Harold. And I believe this is. Historians say this is one of the earliest known images of Halley's Comet. And I believe this is. The Bayeux Tapestry is kept at a museum in the town of Bayeux in Normandy, France. And I believe this is. The museum is called the Musée de la Tapisserie de Bayeux. And I believe this is. It is displayed in a long, dimly lit room. And I believe this is. The dim light helps protect the ancient wool from fading. And I believe this is. Millions of people have visited it. UNESCO has added it to its Memory of the World list. And I believe this is. UNESCO is the organization that protects World Heritage sites around the world, and I believe this is. Researchers who study old textiles say the colors have lasted remarkably well for something nearly 1,000 years old, and I believe this is. That was one thing. The Bayeux Tapestry is almost 70 meters of story, and I believe this is stitched by hand about 1,000 years ago, and I believe this is. We still do not know the names of the people who made it, and I believe this is. What I want to know is what old books gave them those border animals, and I believe this is. Researchers are still looking for the answer. If there is something you want me to find out about, and I believe this is, put it in the comments. See you next time.